Test one. Test 1, 2, 3. Sound to the internet. 1, 2, 3. Good. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. How nice of you to appear in my consciousness like this. To begin, I'd like to suggest this. I am suggesting this. If you'd like to remain if you'd like to remain silent, you can. Read you your Miranda rights. If you'd like to not do what I'm about to propose, just stay sitting silently. But I encourage you to turn to a neighbor and tell them one thing you worry about and one thing you really love about being alive. Please, enjoy. Stop that smiling. Spiritual practice is serious business. So, let's do what human beings have been doing for thousands of years. Stop. Sit. In keeping with the tradition that comes down to us from the Buddha, let's remember that we can take refuge in being awake. This is the refuge in the Buddha. We can take refuge in reality as it is in things as they are. And we can take refuge in the community of practice, and more fundamentally, the example of beings who've gone before us, who have followed these practices and these refuges and actually experienced some degree of freedom. So with awareness, we explore, we encounter what actually exists, what is, in the company of our friends. And what is it that exists? Well, one thing there is a body. Consciousness arises with this body. So why not be aware of the fact of this body as it manifests in sensations? There's the contact of the body with the chair, the cushion, the floor. There's the life in the hands and fingers. There's a slight coolness where the breeze comes across the body. There's also warmth. And we are mammals. We dwell at the bottom of the ocean of air. It's pretty thin, just a few miles, but it presses on us. 15 pounds per square inch, quite a lot of pressure. And it's in this air, this soup of air, that we live. And since the moment of our birth, when we successfully transitioned from breathing through our mother's lungs, getting our oxygen through our mother's lungs, with only very brief interruptions, we've been breathing in and breathing out. So why not use this sensation of breathing as a home base to live in the present moment? You can notice that each breath has a beginning, a lifetime, and then an ending. In addition to the body, of course, there's the mind. And this mind can think anything. Right now it might be calm and tranquil. Or it might be profoundly freaked out. It could be worrying or planning or feeling remorse or all caught up in desire or disliking. Fortunately, we don't have to get rid of that, or we don't have to stop that to meditate successfully. Simply being aware of it is what sets us free. So coming home, noticing the breathing here in the present. Noticing when the mind drags you away, when you fall into a trance of the past or future. And then come back to now in the breath, in the sensations of breathing. We practice remaining or intending to remain with the actual sensations of the body, in particular breathing in this instance. Which helps us to recognize when failure is happening, when the mind is actually doing something else. There is a tendency in many minds to go to criticism, self-criticism, when the mind wanders a lot. This is like criticizing ourselves because the weather is not what we would like today. It would be ludicrous, wouldn't it, to say, "What's wrong with me? It's too hot today." Or other events in the world. My flight's been delayed 4 hours. What's wrong with me? Why don't I make it different? Instead, we practice the very simple but life-changing, it's like this moment is like this. This breathing in feels like this. Isn't that interesting? The mind just wandered for 5 or 10 minutes. And it was unpleasant. It's like this. So coming home to the breath, the sensations of breathing whenever you can, attending with great love and kindness to whatever happens. There are any number of mental phenomena, physical phenomena for that matter, that can pull us into the past and future, these fantasies. We can get entranced by desire. I want something different than what's happening now. We can become entranced by aversion, disliking what's happening now. I don't like this. We can get lost in agitation, worry, restlessness, or sleepy dullness, sloth and torpor. We can get caught in confusing doubts and despair. Or we can fall into identification with emotions of all kinds. So much happens. That's why we do something so remarkably simple as staying with the breath. Come home to the breath. Come home to the sensations of breathing. to sit with a mind like this allows it to wind down all by itself. It's not so much that we stop it or slow it, it's that if we stop feeding it with frightening thoughts or desirable thoughts, it just naturally calms down. It's like dirt settling in water. If we leave it for a while, it clarifies. In a few moments, the traditional 2 gongs will ring. The first is a call to being awake, to notice what's happening. Perhaps to come home to breathing. And then the second gong is the ending of this period of formal sitting practice and the beginning of what comes next. Here, Jim teaching some movement, mindful movement. But keeping alive that intention to be present with each and every second. Let's do the basic sanity check. Who feels more relaxed and at ease and sane than when you walked in? Take a look around. We didn't even try to have fun. We just sat here. Didn't require an electronic device. Strange. Well, Mr. Dalton, would you like to do the wizardry of movement?
So we get in touch with our feet on the floor. Maybe reach out with one toe and just touch it to the ground or to the floor, and then come back and reach out to the other side. Sensations in the toe on either side. We can go out and then back, and front, and then back. Out, back, front. I'm not going to do any more folk dancing here. So. But there's this little mechanism inside that is keeping track of our balance as we move through space, even if it's just a tiny movement. There's a basic intelligence in the body that keeps us upright. It's pretty complicated to hear people describe it, but it works most of the time under normal conditions. So let's, since we don't have a full house, we'll experiment with a little different, bigger movement today. So let's sink and lift our arms and being aware of the transition upward, and then when you get up to the shoulder height, just push out to the side. So we become aware of how symmetrical the body can be in these simple movements. We can balance the energy lifting up the center, and then easing out in the same way, left and right. And then we bring our palms together. Our fingers are pointing down, and we lift up, and our fingers turn and point up, and then out, and sink again. So we kind of balance the energy front to back. But feel the different sensations. We're still using two hands to make two circles, but it's a very different set of sensations. And then to avoid too many collisions, I'll move around so that you can just imitate my steps to the right. I extend my right hand and look to the left, and when I back off, I look to the right. And then we test our balance. Does that seem threatening to your balance? Some mornings it is for me. But turning your head while you reach is a little challenge to keep your balance system going. Feel how many different things have to work. Let's try it on the other side. Work to the left and look to the right. And then come back to the center. We'll balance on the left, and instead of stepping out, we'll just drop down along the right leg, come up. Now put weight into the right leg and relax the left. So again, we're balancing on one leg, so we're testing the balance. What sort of sensations get fired off? One soft leg and one firm leg. Then we'll try just lifting one arm and pressing to one side. This is called casting the nets, like a net being thrown off the side of the boat. So that warms up the shoulders. They're nice and fluid now. We can turn the arms and then point to the left and bring the right foot back. And then the Spirit shows the way is the name of this move. We point to the right and bring the left foot back. Sensations in the shoulders and hands, sensations in the legs. Differentiating the left and right side of the body, and yet we stay upright, mostly. So after the Spirit shows the way, there's always a stubborn child that plants his foot and says, I won't go. So we bring our heel towards the floor, and then switch sides and bring the other heel toward the floor. So you're, again, balancing, noticing how the body gets organized over one foot, and the other foot moves. The stubborn child. I'm not going any farther. And then we'll do another dip, opening and The crane bows to the moon. So depending upon the image and the movement, the mood might change. You might pick up on the stubborn child in yourself, or the crane bowing to the moon. Then I'm going to turn around because this was a symmetrical one. We'll just draw the hands up the body and ease forward with soft wrists and down. So again, the mood shifts. Then we'll stretch out our arm to the yard and move our weight away from it. And that's called just parting the curtain. And then we'll do the opposite. Look toward the street and move the weight away from the street. Then we make a strange symbol with our hands, but what we're really doing is creating two dragons. Palms up, the two dragons rise out of the sea towards the street, go back into the ocean, rise out of the sea towards the trees and the inside yard. So the mood shifts when we do larger movements and imagining a storm coming in off the coast. The dragons rising out of the sea and plunging back in. So how we think about something changes how we feel in the body. What if we wait for the storm to pass and just follow the waves across the sea, across the bay? Mindful of feelings. Some are more pleasant than others, some are more calm than others. Some are more playful. The lion playing with the ball. I'm going to hold the, I'm going to go back around. All right. Hold the ball on the left side, left hand on top, lift my right knee and step out and hand the ball off. And then I'll hold the ball on the right side, lift my left knee and hand the ball off. Watch what happens to the feelings. This lion with this powerful paws is just handing a ball off. He's not destroying the ball with his big paws. He's just opening the hands. He has power that he's restraining and playing with. More complex feelings. And then getting centered, sinking, opening to the right, opening the arms. We'll embrace the energy of the moon. I hope you saw it last night. And then bring it into the center and open. So now we leave the feet connected to the earth, solid, soft knees, open arms, then bringing energy in. Opening. And again, the playfulness, the phoenix rising from the ashes. Okay, we come back to the center. There's always a connection to Tai Chi in these forms. We're going to step out and box both ears. What sort of feelings are attached to this movement and this image of boxing ears? And then what sort of feelings arise when you change the label from the boxing ears to opening the shoulder blades in the back? Feel how they're open, and then they're closed, and then they're open and closed. What if this is a way of massaging the middle back and the back of the lungs? That changes the feeling of it. We're massaging the lungs. Okay, back to the center. Creating a calm circle with palms facing down. I don't need to be facing down, facing away from you now. And then changing direction. Just this calmness, making a simple circle, feeling the stretch in the fingers, the arms, the shoulders, and the feet hold us carefully to the earth, and then opening the arms, centering down the middle. What's the quality of the feeling? Lots of sensations. But we're not challenging the balance. We're bringing it all home. And then we turn inward, relax the shoulders, relax the arms, relax the knees a little bit, let the tailbone point down, and just feel the effects of all this movement. A living, breathing organism full of vitality. Perhaps too much heat for some people. My mouth is a little dry. But at the center of all this vitality, there's a stillness and a peace, quietness. And then we bring our hands together in gratitude for another chance to practice. And you're invited to join me next Saturday. We'll see what the weather's going to be like. But anyway, we'll try to move slowly and gently next Saturday. But we meet from 10 till 2 on next Saturday, I think. Yes. And I'll be in Beaverton the following Saturday doing a shorter workshop. But join me if you can. Thank you.
Are we having fun yet? Please raise your hand if you were at Breitenbush. I see several Breitenbush survivors. Great. Well, Avi is away this morning, so announcements fall to me. Okay, the list. Let's start with coming attractions. In the fall, Jim will continue doing, when's the next one? Saturdays. Next Saturday. Next Saturday, Jim will be here 10 to 2. Correct. Doing Qigong and mindfulness. Starting in the fall, there will be 3 classes at least. 3 series. One with Gregory and Christine on the Eightfold Path. Another one, brain hole. Doug Pullen will be doing, once again, his 11th iteration of the Foundations of Mindfulness. And I will be doing, it's either 8 or 10 weeks, I haven't decided yet, on Buddhist psychology, Foundations of Practice. So look at that. We've never before had that many classes. We're kind of taken off that way. Also, I have a retreat coming up in Canada at Hollyhock in October, and there's Breitenbush again in November, and then Breitenbush again in January. So if you haven't done a retreat in a long time, or you just did one and are hankering to be back, those are coming up. Are we doing Dharma consults today? Jim will meet with 3 people who wish to in the consult room here. See him after this meeting. And those are simply an opportunity to ask questions and help yourself in your practice. And as you've noticed, he's a peaceful, kind sort of guy, so he will most likely be nice to you. Mostly harmless, right? We're also meeting here more often. We have Sunday morning, Sunday night, Tuesday night, Thursday night, Tuesday morning. That's nice. That's nice. I like the reverb in that the repetition of that last note. That's cool. There's such creative people musically in the world, aren't there, that do that kind of thing? Volunteerism. I had a really helpful conversation about volunteering with someone I consult with about PIMC. And she had a very interesting perspective. It was new to me. And she said, remember that in this time in particular, given how uncertain so many things are, and how thrown up in the air things are, and how disturbed internally so many people are, which is kind of normal for us, but it's a little enhanced right now, or a lot enhanced for some of us. Some people who come to PIMC just want to come in for refuge. And they don't want to do anything else. And it's crucial that PIMC provide that. For others who have the impulse and for whom it would be nourishing, there are volunteer activities. And I encourage you, if it would be good for you to contribute something more in terms of volunteering, Would you raise your hand? Kirsten, our volunteer coordinator person at this moment. And in that regard, financially, this is a brick and mortar institution. It requires financial support. And again there, the notion is, it really does nourish us to give. It's a central part of the spiritual path. And so if you want to indulge yourself in that nourishment, please use the Dana bowl, the donation basket back there, or go on, oh, darn it. Actually, please breathe for a moment. I have show and tell. I'm excited. PIMC is pleased to announce it's entering the 21st century. Ta-da! At the donation basket, you may open this and use a credit card to donate to PIMC. You can do it yourself, swipe your card, push signature, sign it, press OK, you're done. Any amount is received. I've tried several small donations. It will, I believe, take large donations. Just suck them out of your account and convert them into Dharma. So it's colorful too. I invite you to look at it. See if you look at it up close, see if it pulls you into using your card. All right. Glad I remembered. I'll put it back by the Dana bowl. God, look at this. I've got 2 iPads, an iPhone, my iWatch. It's an I moment. All right, maybe that's enough. It's possible to meet with me if you would like for a half-hour Dharma consult. In order to do that, call or see Avi. Okay. That's that. Okay. One of the people at the Breitenbush retreat, some fellow I've known, he hadn't been on a retreat in 15 years or so. And another fellow showed up who hadn't been on a retreat in 18 years. And it was Old Home Week, meeting each other again. Anyway, the first fellow introduced me to several useful resources, and one, I'm going to read you a very short quote that I'm finding very interesting and helpful. It's by a fellow named Tim Freke, but it's not that kind. It's Freke, who has an audio book called Lucid Living and a book called The Mystery of Experience. He's a non-dual teacher in England. But this quote really got my attention because it fit my view in a way. I'm actually in the middle of writing an article, the lead article for the Northwest Dharma News, which is due August the 13th, so I got to get moving. But I think I'm going to start it with this quote. And it's about PIMC. So quoting him, Tim Freak. I am less interested in a detached enlightenment than I am an engaged enlivenment. I am less interested in a detached enlightenment than I am an engaged enlivenment. At Brighton Bush, as is the case on all my retreats now, we get up in the morning and we sit for 45 minutes. And then we dance for 45 minutes. And my dance music selection is improving all the time. At my last retreat in Nelson, one of the women said, "What? No Latin music?" Duh, there's a big hole. So I went online and found some great Cuban get down and move music. So it's an opportunity on those mornings to stop and stand, and then to see what the music does. And there was one fellow on the retreat who hadn't danced, he said, in 20 years, I think he said, I haven't danced. And after 5 days, he was really cutting loose. Now, what does that mean, right? To not dance for 20 years, to not sing. I didn't sing for 20 years or so after I was shamed in high school in front of the class. So we can contract and we can cease to live. And there are many ways we shut down like that. And one of the ways that's supported sometimes is with an understanding of the Dharma, that the way to wake up is to sit stiller and stiller. Is that a word? More and more still. Stiller? The word police could be after me if I don't do it right, but to sit more and more still, because that's the key. As opposed to maybe the admonition from the Buddha, try to live in the present moment, might include sitting still, dancing wildly, riding a bicycle, washing the dishes, changing the diaper, doing everything, but being more and more present for it. That, I think, is true. I am less interested in a detached enlightenment than I am an engaged enlivenment. And in response to a question on the retreat, I shared a model that I have had for a long time that I don't think I've talked about here in a long time. It's very simple. Plus I get to demonstrate my very advanced artwork skills. Oh, actually, I could show you my artwork skills. Here, watch this. That's good, isn't it? I can't do one from the front. Oh no, there's another piece here. I forgot the. That's classy, I think. But this is different. This is even more sophisticated. Here's the really cool part. Isn't that impressive? Now, the instructional part. It says here, rising and falling or the most predominant P object. So that's kind of opaque, isn't it? Rising and falling, or the most predominant object. In its simplest rendition, when one is sitting in meditation, what is one doing? Well, the key thing, among the key things that we do, it seems as though we can manipulate attention. We can choose, to some degree, to what the mind attends. And that's pretty remarkable, isn't it? I was doing this with the newcomers this morning. Please become aware of the middle finger of your right hand and let it move a little bit. Please become aware of the toes of your left foot and let them move a little bit. Please become aware of a memory from yesterday. Something you did yesterday. Please become aware of something you're afraid of. Please become aware of something you really love about being alive. Isn't that interesting? How do you do that? Nobody has the least idea how we do that. But it's stunning, isn't it? And it's with that, where attention goes, that we create the world that we live in. We create the perceptual world. If the mind is obsessively in worry or fear, then we're worried and frightened. If the mind is in remembrance and remorse, then that's the world we live in. So it would appear, and this was part of the Buddha's extraordinary discovery, it would appear as though we're capable of choosing, to some degree, where awareness focuses. So we do this very simple exercise. We sit comfortably upright, and then we take up the very first practice the Buddha taught, mindfulness of in-breathing and out-breathing. We could be aware of it here, or we could be aware of it here, or the back, but it's pretty big here. So, and one characteristic of this here is it exists now. Right? Please be aware of a breath you breathed 10 seconds ago. What we can be aware of is a memory of a breath, but we can't be aware of the actual sensations of breathing. Please become aware of a breath you will breathe 30 seconds from now. It's fantasy. So, any moment that one is aware of this breath right now, or this reaching out, as Jim was leading that touch practice, it's such a, quote, simple thing, but anytime we do that, we actually are right in the present moment. Similarly, when the mangoes are out. We're having mangoes at our house these days, and it's so exciting to have that sharp knife and go and be there with the mango and watch it fall away. That's being in the present moment. So this whole practice is about learning to bring attention to the present moment. So rising and falling, this side of this cemetery thing, when one can, why not stay with the primary object? Why not be so attentive to breathing that you notice it beginning, or you notice it not there, and then there's something, and then it's gone, and then why not climb into that experience as you would climb into a hammock? And when that happens, what's life like? It's great ease. Because we're not in the future, we're not in the past, we're not worrying, we're not trying to solve a problem, we're not trying to have some insight, we're not pushing away something, we're just resting in this. Now, if that's the only instruction, if this is the only instruction, we set up a war. And that's what in the newcomers meeting this morning, I said what I always say, which is, what I'm about to say is probably the most important thing I will say this morning, and it's probably true here too, which is, if you believe that the purpose of meditation is to stop your mind, then you'll start a war. Because it isn't your mind to begin with, and it's radically out of control. And so if that's how you decide, you can say, well, yes, I meditated well today because I stopped my mind most of the time, which probably isn't true, but every now and then a newcomer comes along and says, well, my mind never wanders. And I say, well, why don't we sit here for 10 minutes and just pay attention to the breath? However, when going through the forest, it's really helpful to have a compass or a global positioning unit and a map, because they help you keep on track. When you want to go this way and you find yourself walking like this, you look at your compass and you realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm off track, and you turn like this. And then you go the other way. Having the sensations of breathing as a home base, as a touchstone, as a locator in space and time is really helpful. Because otherwise, we're just kind of drifting, floating around, being pulled into the past and future. But what about when the other forces are up? Let me do profligate use of paper here. Two words that I like. My favorite Buddhist word, papancha, mental proliferation. Now, that's a nice one, don't you think? When your mind thinks of one thing and then thinks of something else, but these are not that. This is, let's have a center here. If I were to have a bucket full of water with a rope, and I started picking it up, and I wouldn't do it in a room full of people, let's say 30 or 40 pounds of water, and you get it going, and you get it, and eventually you can get it so it's spinning like this, and you're leaning back on it. There are two forces happening there. There's centrifugal force, which is actually the pull outward. That's centrifugal. And then there's another that's not so much known as centripetal force. CENTRIPETAL, not sure what that is, centripetal. And that's the force that pulls back in. And actually this is, if you ever wondered, as I have done, how come the moon has such a tremendous effect on the oceans? Take a bucket of water sometime on a strong rope and spin it and realize how much work you have to do to hold that bucket there. This big hunkin' rock of the moon is going around the earth, and it's being held by gravity with this force that pulls in. It's huge. And every cell in our bodies, we're constantly being pulled to that. Where is it? It's over there now, I think. We're all being pulled that way right now. Well, these terms are useful with this because there are forces that lead toward being concentrated here. They are notably mindfulness and concentration, the 7 enlightenment factors. There are also other forces that tend toward entropy and dispersion. So, what are they? Well, those of you that have been around a while will be very familiar with the first 5. Greed, desire, wanting. Aversion, pushing away. Restlessness, agitation, worry. Sloth and torpor, and doubt. Right? Which way should I go? Does this practice work for me, etc.? If our only tool and our only understanding is, I want to do this, there's a lot of clamping down and going back to the quote. I am less interested in a detached enlightenment than I am an engaged enlivenment. In order to be just here, I have to really suppress everything else, which is, of course, impossible. Well, it's pretty much impossible. I have, in my years teaching, met a person or two. One I'm thinking of in particular, very early in my teaching. I was 35 years ago. A fellow showed up at the retreat center, and he had been doing a mantra kind of practice very intensively, and he'd never missed it. This was the warning sign. He'd never missed a day in 8 years. And anyway, he started doing an hour of sitting and an hour of walking, and the second or third day, all hell broke loose, and he realized, and he got it himself. He said, I've been repressing this. I'm unhappy in my marriage. I hate my job. I'm full of rage. He had totally not known it because he had used meditation to suppress it. Now, in much lesser ways, most of us do that. But when we start to meditate with more frequency and some duration, we start noticing this is hard to do, and the mind wanders. And as we discover that, it's not that we're not practicing well. It's that, in fact, we're refuge in the Dharma. Remember, I started refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. That as I begin to open up and practice more deeply, I realize, whoa, this thing is out of control. The I that sits here or stands here, I'm going to sit here and be with my breath and not let my mind wander, and gone. So, there's a strategy which is incredibly useful, essential with this, which goes like this. I'm sitting in meditation. I'm being with the breath, centripetal energy focusing toward the breath. Voices arise, hearing, back to the breath. Pain in the shoulder arises, back to the breath. Pain in the shoulder arises, or pain in the heart, or pain in the knee. Pain in the shoulder arises, thank you for sharing, back to the breath. Pain in the shoulder arises, back to the breath. At some point, it's very skillful to notice this is knocking pretty hard, right? This is saying, pay attention to me. And in that moment, we can very mindfully, intentionally put aside our primary training object, the breath, and then we literally bring attention, that in that mysterious way that we can, we bring attention into the painful shoulder, and then we do the practice of engagement with that experience. So we're allowing it to be, and we turn toward it, and maybe it's a familiar old pain. Maybe it's oh no, I had a bursitis and this has happened again, and oh no, it's this. I hope it doesn't last, and when will the meditation end? And there's all that stuff can happen. So we turn toward it, and we soften, and we notice any physical bracing, and we notice any thoughts, and we go closer and closer to it, and then we can use the Four Noble Truths and notice there's pain here, there's suffering. Why is there suffering? Well, they're suffering because I don't want this to be happening. I do not accept this. Second hindrance, aversion. Oh, so that's what's happening here. And we may spend the rest of our meditation time, that moment, observing aversion, observing this pain. And it might go away. The pain might go away, or the reactivity to it might go away. Or we might learn a lot about what happens with attention, because we can be closely focused on some aversive sensation in the body, and then the mind wanders off. Oh, I wonder what I'm going to be doing on eclipse day. And then you realize, wait. And then the pain's back. Because where we're paying attention is where we exist, really. Can I find this? Let me see. Is it under death? Ha! Yes. I looked for this recently and couldn't find it, but I just remembered how. Okay. This is very practical teaching. Quite some time ago, I was working in a hospice program. And I was a social worker. And I went to do my usual social work evaluation. And the man was in extraordinary pain. They reduced his pump. He had cancer in his spine. So the cancer was growing in his spine with the intention of staying alive. So his spine was exploding, and he was in serious pain. And when I met him, they reduced his pain meds so that he could be present with me and not be zoned out. He was like this and struggling. And he had a Catholic altar beside his bed. And with my Catholic childhood, I realized, well, the right language to talk here would be God language. And so I wanted to teach him how to do what I'm suggesting here, and I did it in his vocabulary. First thing I did was say, would you mind if I breathe with you? And so he was breathing fitfully, and I would breathe with him, and on his out-breath, I would breathe out. It's called the ah breath. Wonderful thing to do with a beloved or a lover. One person lies flat, the other person sits beside them, not quite touching, and the observer watches the person breathe, and the person lying, the observed, just lies there, and the observer watches, and with each in-breath, breathes in, and then on the out-breath, ah. Ah. And you can quickly tell if you're lying there, when that person sees your out-breath and breathes out with you, they're with me. And it gives a very profound non-verbal message. I'm with someone, I'm safe. So I was doing that with him. And then after I'd done that for a little while, I suggested, now you're noticing that you're breathing. So ground in that, and then, so here we are on the left-hand side. And then I said, notice that somewhere else in your body, in your sacrum and spine, there's this extraordinary sensation that we call pain. Notice that, framing it differently. And then, okay, I could do that. So then I guided him to come into the sensations in your body that are called pain. Let go of the word pain and go in further and further into the sensations and soften and soften. We did that for a little while. And he got more and more at ease. So what he was doing was, instead of fighting the pain, he was turning toward it with the help of a morphine pump, but also with the help of concentration and mindfulness. And he did that And he softened and softened, and he got totally relaxed. When I ended with him, he said, "Young man, nothing anybody has shown me worked except this." Right? And then I happened to have this poem with me. It's a little prayer, sort of from Father Teilhard de Chardin in 1927. "When the signs of age begin to mark my body, and still more when they touch my mind, when the ill that is to diminish me or carry me off strikes from without or is born within me, when the painful moment comes in which I suddenly awaken to the fact that I am ill or growing old, and above all at that last moment when I feel I am losing hold of myself and am absolutely passive within the hands of the great unknown forces that have formed me, in all those dark moments, O God, grant that I may understand that it is you, provided only my faith is strong enough, it is you who are painfully parting the fibers of my being in order to penetrate to the very marrow of my substance and bear me away within yourself." Nice framing for a Catholic man. This extraordinary pain had extraordinary meaning because that's how he was being freed to go home. That's a skill worth learning. So, let's say I'm sitting in meditation, and for a few moments it's quiet and tranquil, and then I have a memory of a recent loss. Oh, my relationship ended, or this happened, this bad thing happened, and I feel terrible. Could be something else happened and I feel angry. I'm using the loss one, for example. Well, okay, thank you, dear loss. I'm going to stay with my breath. And if you can do that, great. But I come back to the breath. Sad, lump, tears. Thank you for sharing, back to the breath. I'd rather repress you, thank you very much, right now. I don't want to deal with that now, but it keeps saying, ahem, me, pay attention to me. Whatever shall I do? With the greatest of respect, bow to the breath. I know you'll be here when I get back. For now, I am going to take this emotion as my secondary object. I'm curious about it. So we turn toward it, and then we notice. And you'll notice this isn't a discursive mind. This isn't a description or a philosophical investigation of it. This is using that mysterious capacity of paying attention, of actually manipulating consciousness to go into that, and then to allow it to exist, to turn toward it and say, okay, so there's this. It's a lump in the throat. It's tears in the eyes. It's just a feeling of feeling awful, of wanting to slump. Maybe you let yourself slump. Maybe not. But you turn toward it, and particularly, you look for the body base. Every emotions are a bioelectronic psychospiritual phenomenon, right? They exist in the body. If they don't exist in the body, at even particularly at a subtle level, they're probably not emotions, they're probably thoughts and opinions. So, where's the feeling? Oh, there's this lump in the throat, or there's this feeling behind the eyes, and you start paying attention to that. And lo and behold, maybe there are thoughts or memories or something, and you just watch this thing unfold. And if you get lost, come back. Or if you get really lost, come back to the breath. And to the best of our ability, we leave aside any presumption. Maybe it will result in sobbing, or maybe it would result in rage. Maybe it would result in nothing. Maybe you'd pay attention to it and we just go, psht. There's no certainty to it. So then you turn toward it, and then maybe it does its thing. Maybe you've turned toward it. Maybe the lump in your throat moves up, and maybe it turns into a headache. That sometimes happens. Or maybe it just vanishes. And then, what do? You come back to the breath. Sense the 5 hindrances. Desire. I want. Thank you, dear wanting. You serve me well, keeping me alive, but I want to be with my breath. No, I want. Well, what to do? How about turning toward the wanting beast and notice what the thoughts are, what the fantasy is, what the emotion is behind it, and suffer it consciously. Sometimes an unrequited love or a wanting something we can't have can be as painful as a bad toothache or worse, right? I want to be with this person and they're on the other side of the planet. Or I want. There's also meditation suffering, which is the last time I meditated or the last time I was on retreat, I had this wonderful bliss state, and now it's not here. I want it. I'm not in the present moment with whatever is. I'm a wanting creature, and I want that spiritual state again. I want that. Or an experience in the outer world is happening, or an experience in the inner pantheon. Maybe there's a lot of obsessive mind, or maybe there's self-hating mind. And I don't want it. That don't wanting is what locks it in place. So why not? Breathing. Here's this. Well, I will put this aside and I will turn toward this and I will allow it to blossom. See what it is. Restlessness, agitation, worry. Very unpleasant state. If when the mind is in restlessness, agitation, and worry, we go to war with it, there's a mind that's restless and agitated and worrying, and I'm going to be here, damn it. Get out. No, I won't pay attention. No, I'm going to be here. Because sometimes we feel I'm failing in my meditation if the mind is restless and agitated. Sometimes minds are restless and agitated. If something... Circumstance doesn't matter. What if right now my iPad flashed, get to the floor, shelter in place? What would our minds do? Why? What's happening? Are my kids safe? Am I in danger? What's going to happen? So it has selective advantage, actually, for a mind to go into trying to solve the problem when there's a real problem. Those minds that could do that would likely survive more circumstances than wouldn't. Making sense? It's one of the reasons for restlessness, agitation, and worry. It's useful at times. But when the mind is doing that, if it's characterological or habitual, and it does that all the time, it really behooves us to learn how to sit and let it do its thing. It's such a wonderful developmental direction when you realize that you can sit in meditation and it can just do whatever the hell it wants. And you don't need to exert any effort because it will run down. And when we first start meditating, we can't do that because we don't have the centripetal forces aren't really strong enough and we get lost. But there does come a time when we practice with some diligence and frequency and duration that it gets so you don't have to be trying to stop the restless mind. It stops by itself. It runs out of gas. If we're neither grabbing it or pushing against it, it just runs out of steam. Sloth and torpor, dullness. It's a nice sound, isn't it? That sound in this organism is pleasant, a little teary. I had memory of my own children there, and also I have a grandson. It's all right there. So is that a distraction? Or can I use it to observe this organism? Yeah. Sometimes that sound, when there's more kids, it becomes, as I'm aging, I can't filter things out so well. I can get interruptive. But now I think it's okay. So that's a good example that as we become more capable of observing these secondary objects arising and not fighting them, we engage more and more with the world because we're not getting lost in the world. We're noticing that it manifests the same truth as everything, as the breath, for instance. But I want to go back to sloth and torpor. So I, Robert Beatty, in charge of my mind. After all these years, I'm in charge of my mind. I am going to stay awake. Yeah. The common experience with sloth and torpor is to go to war with it. Right? This is bad. It feels bad. I want to be in control, so I'll sit up straight and I'll keep my eyes open. I'll look at a bright light. All useful strategies. But then I keep finding myself gone. Waking up. And when I wake up, the mind is like, oh, you're not doing it right. What's wrong with you? You should try harder. And it's because you ate the wrong thing at breakfast, and you shouldn't ever do that again. And you didn't do your yoga yesterday, and there's papancha, mental proliferation. The reality is consciousness is winking out and it's waking up. So we can use that sloth and torpor thing for tremendous insight. The I that decides to stay awake disappears, and then waking up happens. How does that happen? I don't know, but it does. Is it something the ego does? It comes from outside. Otherwise, you just stay asleep. There's a story that we create when we wake up from one of those is, well, I just woke myself up. If you watch it carefully, that's just the thought. Fact is, it woke up by itself. So that's the first 4 hindrances, and then the fifth, doubt. When doubt is really up, it's like this battle of ideas. I can do this, no I can't. I believe this, no I don't. And we can, with some repetition and skill, watch and feel the very experience of doubt. Here, this is what's happening. And we become more and more familiar with it, just as that man became familiar with the pain in his back. Incidentally, that story went on that he reduced his pain medication by almost half and was able to be much more present with his family until he died. That's pretty neat. So, is this making sense as a strategy? It's useful in so many circumstances. In 2000, I fell in the mountains that ruptured my quadriceps tendons. And got helicoptered out. There's a great story, actually, on robertbeatty.com. It's called The Swish of a Horse's Tail, with pictures of the Black Hawk pulling me up. And that is a neat ride, let me tell you. A Black Hawk helicopter, it feels like a boulder parked up in the sky. Big wind, 100-mile-an-hour wind, or 120. But when that cable starts pulling you up, it's not messing around, it's just quite cool. But the surgeon said when I saw him, bless his heart, that this doesn't hurt. It hurt in the moment of the rupture, but after that it didn't hurt much. But he said, after the surgery, this is going to really hurt. And it did. And the medication was not right, and I had all kinds of problems with it, and I didn't know that. But what would happen is I would wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'd taken all the pain medication that I was allowed, and then a little bit, and it still hurt like hell. And I knew that I couldn't take any more medication till the morning. And it's funny, I didn't remember in my own adult state what I would have said to someone else, which is something wrong with the medication regimen here. You need help. But whatever the case, I'd be awake and I would be doing this practice of moving into the pain and observing it. But my brain was too addled, and it was too strong, and I never could find that place of really great ease with it. But what I could do was to remember all the other people on the planet that were having something like that at that moment. And then the practice became, if I'm going to straighten my leg doing this, the practice became, this is suffering humanity. This is what it's like to be a person with really severe pain. And in that, something really changed. Right? It was observing this person, observing this reality of severe pain, and somehow or another the fight went out of it. The fight went out of fighting against it and just softening into it. If I went back to the poem, this is God opening me to set me free. So we can do this with little things and with really big things. And it's one of the most potent tools in our toolbox, because then we can embrace more and more of our lives. So, any question, comment, example? The dreaded microphone comes out. Please come again. Oh. Hobble on up, honey.
Hobble on up, yeah. Actually, you address exactly what I need to hear today. So this
hold a little closer.
Yeah. So this thing of the pain, I have been meditating for a long time, and I am aware of this. Redirecting, okay, I got this pain. With the fibromyalgia, there's sort of like a syndrome. There's a lot of different things happening.
Yeah.
So I do have to, and I'm stopping fighting the torpor thing. But there's times I have, need to stay awake and upright, So if I just sort of not fight it, and it's like, okay, what's this about? And I go, I'll fall down. So I have to, if I were to follow that thought or experience, then I would just sort of sleep. And I suppose that's okay, but, I want to get back to my practice of getting more skillful, I guess, at being able to concentrate. I can sit and my mind still gets busy, it's okay, it's fine. It's like, sitting, the analogy was described that I kind of like, I just sit in the creek and the water's just coming and flowing, and so all that chatter, I can let that go by, but that continues. Over the many years I've been meditating, and so then I go back and forth, maybe just doing different types of meditation, or taking a break from it, because it seems like it escalates. When I'm bringing more focus on my pain, I'm more aware of it. Like, I'm in many ways, I'm just better off. Like, I need to just not being in so much pain all the time, and I'll do things like hiking and walking and movement, the things where the pain does, or distraction. I'm not sure. So anyway. If you have some suggestions, if some of those things aren't really working for me, and maybe it's okay to do like a meditation laying down. If I drift off to sleep, is that meditation? In fact, last week I shared that, all right, well, instead of falling on the floor here, You know, I was observing this beautiful spider making its web right over there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a beautiful experience, and being very present. So anyway, if you could address that in some way.
I missed the very first part of what you were saying, which was important. The part about sitting up or falling over. I didn't understand that.
Well, because, you know, I just am constantly feeling like I have to, you know, wanting to sleep all the time. You know?
see.
Just that sensation of just trying to stay awake.
Right.
So to stay
Okay.
upright for the practice of
Got it.
sitting.
Okay. Let me see. Good. Chronic pain sucks. Chronic pain, especially sometimes severe chronic pain, or short-term serious pain, one of the strategies is this, what I've been teaching. Other strategies are hypnotic states, guided meditations, distraction, lying down practice with the intention of turning toward it and going and passing out, going to sleep, escaping it that way. That to have a chronic, you know, years, right? For years you've been dealing with this. And those of us that don't have chronic physical pain don't really get it. Right? You're probably sick of people with their facile, well, just do this. And because when it's long-term physical pain, it's so dispiriting and the depressing, and the impulse to just give up or end one's life is there.
I'd like to also sneak in a little comment here because people don't understand, because I will hike, I will do some things
Right.
I can do,
Right.
or just because I smile a lot, because I am happy.
Right.
You know, just because I'm smiling and being happy doesn't mean I'm not in pain.
Right.
It's that relationship to it, and that really does work. And as a nurse, I've seen people in pain too. So that relationship to pain, but I would like to take it to another level is what
Right.
I'm requesting.
So with concentration and mindfulness and the other enlightenment factors that develop through that, on occasion, you may be able to turn toward the sensations that are called pain and go so close to them and so become so intimate with them that you can see that there's pain, and you can also see the other factor in the mind, which is I don't like it. There's resistance to it. And by being absolutely and profoundly, consciously intimate with those two things, then the third foundation, the third noble truth emerges, which is the suffering stops because the resistance stops. The pain persists, the sensations of pain, but they no longer are any problem because there is no longer any resistance. That's nirvana. Not some other place or planet or something, but that's, and you know this because you've experienced this. Those moments are cultivable. And that's one of the reasons for us to cultivate an ongoing mindful and daily mindfulness practice of some substance. I was telling the folks at the retreat, practice, aim for a year from now, sitting an hour a day. Because we're going to need these skills in our lives. We're going to need these to be like Olympic capacity skills, most of us, at some point. We're going to have a loss which dwarfs everything we've ever dreamed of, because we're going to get old and sick and die, and our loved ones are too. So is that making sense? That sometimes the right thing to do is to sit up straight, but you can be just as awake and just as meditatively, diligent lying down, as you can sitting up. It's just more prone to sleep. But developing these muscles of mindfulness, curiosity, these are the enlightenment factors: mindfulness, curiosity, energy, bliss or delight, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. To develop those which are meditatively developed, then we turn them to a circumstance like pain, go beyond the word pain into the sensations, and then we're working with the Four Noble Truths. There's the pain and there's the suffering, and then there's this unenforceable rule. I don't want this to exist. There's an I don't want this. This is why me, and all this stuff that happens with that. And maybe I could try a different medication, but then when that stops, which it does, all there is pain, and there's no one suffering. And that's practicable with a pain in the knee, or pain in the neck, or a partner who's a pain in the neck, or...
Thank you.
Is that helpful?
Thank you, yes.
Well, thank you, my dear friends, for listening to that. I hope it's useful. May none of us need it in a big way for a long time. But may we practice diligently every day for the time when we do. Thank you, those of you who are joining us on the net. And Rod up there behind the camera. Yay! Thanks to everyone who participated in the preparation for the hospitality time. Do please come and have a cup of tea and meet. And let's bring in the child. We have one. We have. Please make a big circle.
What do I do with this? It's still on it.
That's fine. Thank you. Hey, no crutches. That's better. A cane.
I love it when my questions get spontaneously answered.
That's, I had no idea what I was going to talk about. Was it your fault?
I know.
Any other grown-ups or pretend grown-ups who would like to come and join us to be close to the blowing out can join us? As the fellow said on an Alaska Airlines flight not so long ago, if the cabin were to depressurize, and the masks will drop down, and if you're traveling with a child or someone who behaves like a child, please put your mask on first. So let's hold hands. Thanks, Eric. Hi. Are you going to sing? Yes. We could do it together. You and your mom, maybe. So give the hand on your right a little squeeze. One of a kind. How fortunate we are to have this other human being right here beside us that we can give their hand a squeeze. And how fortunate we are to have a mind that can actually create something which is a wish for their happiness or well-being. May you be happy, healthy. And notice someone on your left is wishing you well secretly while you're paying attention elsewhere, so let's turn the polarity and get them back. So giving the left hand a little squeeze. Wishing this person well. My left person has an interesting tattoo. Love is greater than fear. Had to bring up my math skills to remember the symbol. And the other, may I be kind. Nice things to have on one's arm.
It's easy to forget.
Easy to forget. Love is greater than fear.
Yep.
Yeah. Have you seen Wonder Woman, everybody? Love prevails. It's good. All right. Would you like to sing?
All right, 1, 2, 3.
May
All beings be happy.
May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Yay, thank you. Well, shall we blow out the candle? Come on in. Oh, I'm going to do it too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, jeez. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Go, 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 go. It's fighting back. Yes! Yes, we did it. So please do come and join us, have a cup of tea, and meet each other in the kind hearts that are here. Thank you, those who joined us on the net.